And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a returning good brother into the temple. Previously here for the Lost Roads of Lociam, and now coming back with its expansion known as The World That Is, the one and only Rasmus Strand. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Apart from the abhorrently hot temperature, but other than that, we're doing okay.
Yeah, it is that time of year. And for me, it's just a case of counting the days until winter comes back, because even as cold as winter gets, you can always put another layer on, and when there's enough snow on the ground, it's free ammunition.
Fair.
Or in my case, a new way to mess with people, doing things like getting some lunch trays from a school, filling them with snow, and putting them around someone's bed. So when they step out of bed, they're stepping in snow.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kinder than dragging the bed outside.
Would it surprise you if I said I've done that? Not all the way out. All I did was they had a window that led to a porch, so I just dragged the bed out there because they weren't moving. I'm like, oh,
I'm sure they had it coming.
I give people three warnings. After that, then the gloves come off.
Or in this case, on.
Mm-hmm. But now, when it comes to getting into the heart of the matter, when it comes to the world that is, was this always planned to be an expansion, or was this a collection of ideas that compiled themselves with time?
So there are two answers to this. The first one is that this was part of the core rulebook in a previous edition of this game. But that edition of the game was close to 1,000 pages of just solid text. It was completely impossible to navigate and completely impossible to play. So I decided very early on to break that tome apart and make different parts of it. Then the task became to figure out which parts go into which book. And the world that is focuses on the world of the humans in the Lost Roads. They are the people that are, rather than the people who were or the people who will be. So those are books that are coming up later, but we're starting with the humans because they're most numerous. And then once we'd established what was supposed to be in the book, it came down to writing and doing mountains of playtesting to make sure that there was actually fun additions to the core rulebook, and so that it would blend well. And that's what turned out to be the world that is.
Oh yeah, and I can certainly get that. And with that in mind, I do appreciate the cover setup that you have of the original cover being torn into like this.
Yes, it's made by the original artist for the cover. So I asked him to do a modification on the original cover, and this is what he made. So the undead are a major part of the new book, so we decided to incorporate that into the cover art.
Yeah, and it looks to me that from just looking at the index for the world that is, as far as the material you had sent, while there is a major focus on the human side of things, it's just as much on the factions, on the particular ethnicities, and on how humans view magic.
Yeah, so the book has some general information on world building, and then it has a section called the Big Three, which is a rundown of the three biggest religions among the humans on the Lost Roads. And of course, there is a certain amount of religious strife between these. All the other chapters are more how you can affect this strife, or how you can latch on to triumph in these trying times. So then there is magic, and there is some other fun stuff in there, but the world building part sort of lays out how kingdoms are run, and how law and order are maintained in the outback, and then there's a text about which church hates the other church more, that sort of stuff.
Yep. And I believe now, given the naming convention of the expansions, I am curious how that came about. You know, especially with this one being called The World That Is. Is it more to reflect on points in history within the setting?
Well, it's a callback to a line in a TV show called Babylon 5, in which a time traveler is caught out by one of his friends while he's doing a time jump. And the ally says, "You are the one who was. You are the one who will be, but you are the one who is." I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact line, but I figured that was a fairly good thing. So the character creation rule set is the world to be, which is a term we use for people who are expecting. Then there is the world that is, and then we'll see about the world that was and the world that will be, and that sort of stuff later on, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. And I'll always appreciate any love given to Babylon 5. I think one of these days I will probably break out the Babylon project if I feel like humbling my players.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally enjoy Easter eggs a lot, and there is at least one Babylon 5 Easter egg in this book.
Yeah. Lord knows I've done Easter eggs in my in my own work, or putting in certain jokes to see what I can get away with. You know, very much a graduate of that school of thought.
Yep.
But one of the major crunch elements that is added into the world that is alchemy. When it comes to the concept of doing alchemy, was that something that was considered for the core book at one point, but got moved to this because a lack of room, or was there a different path?
There were herbs and potions, which is the chapter. It's also in the world that is, and I had written a bunch of plants and how to find specific plants and when to find specific plants and stuff, but it got over crunchy. It wasn't fun anymore. People were doing logistics on which plants they had, so I streamlined that system very, very heavily to make it more narratively satisfying for the players. And when I was done with that, I figured, I should probably do something that isn't about plants, but is still about making cool stuff. And then alchemy became a thing. So alchemy was never in the running to be in the core rulebook, whereas herbs and potions at one time were, but not in this edition of the game. So it found its natural place here, I think, and the two complement each other quite well. There are several things that you can make using either of these two branches of similar chemistry, whereas some concoctions or some potions are unique. So a herb master or herbalist cannot make it, but an alchemist can, and vice versa.
Yeah. And item creation in general is one of those tricky things to tackle in TTRPGs. I think largely because some approach it with too much of a face value or too simulation-y of a approach, which leads to it being impractical in other forms. You know, like someone who is trying to make their stuff realistic, but ends up making it unrealistic in completely different ways.
Yeah, and it becomes unfun. Then it becomes more about the spreadsheet than it is about the game, and that's not what I wanted to go for. There are certainly games that do that and do that quite well, but I didn't think this was that game, so I made it very simple. So, for instance, instead of naming specific plants that you need for any one potion, I instead just divide all plants into garden variety plants, unusual or exquisite or singular ones. And a potion will need 4 garden and 1 unusual, or 6 unusual and 1 exquisite, or whatever. And it doesn't matter which kind it is, as long as it contains the prerequisite amount of magical energy or whatever chemical nonsense goes on in potions. It's all about having the right amount of that energy. It doesn't matter if it's this plant or that plant or a third plant. It's all about the sum of its power, and it makes it more accessible for the players, and you can have some better interaction with the material, so that people can actually go make the potions that they want and not get stuck with, I do not have the red blossom of Kerdum, then I can't make this healing potion. And everyone's like, man, isn't there another plant you can use? Like, nope. So only that one that's in the recipe. And it's like, no, I didn't want to go for that. So
I think what I always hated about those kind of recipe specificities is whether it be done in tabletop or video game, is think about cooking. Very rarely, when somebody's cooking, do they 100% all the time stick to the core recipe, especially after they've made it at least more than once. I think of certain local dishes around the world and how there's like a million variants of them.
Yeah, and no recipe will, well, unless it's sponsored by that company, very few recipes will state this exact kind of flour, this exact kind of butter. It will just say flour or butter, because they're similar enough for the bread to work anyway. And I figured that would be the same for potions. Why would it have to be this exact one when one of the local variants will do? Otherwise, one part of the country might be able to make healing potions and another one will not, and that seemed very weird to me when you think about it.
Yeah.
So no, we solidified the system fairly early on, and it's been something that the playtesters have been able to utilize and actually make the potions that they needed to proceed in their adventures, and it's been very rewarding to see. And the same with alchemy too, of course.
Yeah, and with that in mind, the next thing I did want to delve into is, well, delving archaisms and archaeoengineering. With the idea of having advanced ruins within the setting, which certainly adds a new layer, because I think it'd be easy for people to assume that the setting is largely trying to replicate medieval history, when that's not exactly the case.
Now, the Age of Humans is fairly long in this world setting, and there have certainly been civilizations that came before that did surpass the one that's working and alive now.
Hmm.
So there have been civilizations that were technologically and scientifically very much more advanced than anything that's operating today, and those things you can go and dig up if you are lucky enough, and that's what archaeoengineering is all about, and the finding of arcanisms, which are these finds from the old times.
Hmm.
Uh, and of course, it we want to think of progression as linear when it comes to civilizations. We don't want to think about cataclysmic events that throw back the base of our knowledge to a previous age, but that is exactly what has happened to humanity in the Lost Roads, where there have been places where scientific flourishing was very, very, very far in advance of what it is now. And then something calamitous happened, and they got thrown back and destroyed. And Stone Age people moved in on top of their ruins and started all over again. And oh, look, bronze sitting on top of what could have been a magical nuclear reactor. They just didn't know.
Oh yeah, and there's there's been plenty of times where people have looked at certain wonders of the world and tried to reverse engineer them, essentially. Uh, and there's a few other games that are built solely around that concept. Um, one of them is a bit of a torment to get through. Ah. But I I think one of the other things to note is just expanding on the different talents and ensuring that the martial end of things gets as much love as the magical end of things, which is there's a bad habit among certain designers of fantasy games to overcorrect for magic.
Yeah, I the world setting of the world, well, the world of the Lost Roads overall is very magical,
Mhm.
but it has a natural counterbalance in how faith works. Religions are active, gods are real, which means that you can actually attain the same effects by praying as you can through magic.
Mhm.
And then in this book, you add, well, I don't need to do spells, I can make a potion. Or I don't need a prayer, I can make a concoction, so you have alchemy and potion making. And then you can dig up old stuff, and you have the arcanisms, which will essentially do either of those jobs too, only to a very highly specific degree. So it's all about attaining the same goal in different sort of ways.
Mhm.
Um, I found it better to give the players agency in how they wished to attain their goals, rather than say, well, if you want to do this, you have to do magic, or you have to do faith, or you have to do alchemy, but rather double up and give people the chance to choose how they want to do things, which way they want to take.
Which certainly makes sense, and having that kind of freedom is always going to be very much appreciated, uh, especially in an era where some people still insist that martial characters aren't supposed to be powerful. A line that I've heard insisted on a bit too much for my liking.
Yeah.
Uh, but with that with that kind of thing in mind, when it when it comes to differing magic versus faith, how do you usually give the elevator pitch to people jumping in on this? Because even though this is an expansion for some folk, this will be first introduction to Lost Roads.
Yeah, so I would say that magic and faith complement each other quite well, but it's very difficult to have a character that's good at both. It's because it's very difficult to learn, costs a lot of XP to advance either which one. So either you're mediocre at both at best, or you try to be good at one of them. And they form a bit of different approaches to how things work. So you can either go for the religious approach, which might feel more constrained in that there are proverbs and commandments of whatever church it is that you belong to, and if you don't follow them, you might not get what it is that you're praying for. Magic doesn't have such constraints. Magic, on the other hand, has more constraints in what it can do than the sort of umbrella I wish for rain. I don't care how approach that faith has. Magic, you'll need this one particular spell in order to make rain. You can't just go, well, I'll fireball a cloud until it gives up and starts raining. That's not exactly how that works. So there are two avenues to attain goals, depending on how much of a control freak you are, I suppose, which one you would like to go for. But they share a lot of traits as well, whereas the more time you take for either a spell or a prayer, the better the chances that you make it work. The more you try to be sneaky about it, it becomes more difficult. And there are material components as well. For magic, you might need a wand, or you might need, sacrificial dagger or chalk and incense. Whereas for faith, you might need offerings for your god, depending on what religion you believe in. Could be a different set of offerings. So they operate in fairly similar ways because they still interact with the same world. It's just that they do so out of two different sets of necessities.
Yeah, which I can certainly get. And even with all of that, there's still it's still a large investment in a system that is fairly freeform. So somebody who's focusing on that is going to be giving up other options in the process.
Yeah, and we get that with the playtesters too. That people will look at a problem and go, okay, what skills can I bring to the table which will work here? And then someone goes, well, you'll have my axe and you'll have my sword and you'll have my spell. And then someone goes, or I can just sit down and make a prayer. And then you have this interesting interaction between the players where they have to work out which of the speciality skill sets are most suited for this one particular challenge. Maybe a prayer is better this time, maybe a spell is better on the next one, maybe a fully mundane version is better on the third. So it lends itself to some good role playing in the groups, and the feel of your character actually being able to contribute and being powerful in one way and complementing the others who are powerful in other ways.
Yeah. Though, has there been the temptation for anyone to make a Gish archetype during playtesting?
Like the ability to do all of it, you mean?
Not necessarily all, but somebody who's competent in martial and magic. That's typically what's thought of when it comes to the idea of a Gish.
Yeah. You don't have to, because the system already allows for it. You can actually use your magic as martial, but it comes at a cost, obviously. So I've had several player characters who've gone, well, we're stepping up to the main bad guy. I'm gonna just use my 9 preparations and burn this person down to their shoes. And look at me roll, and they have an extremely high martial for that one fight. And then for the next fight, they're back down to being at 40 and their friend who is a knight and has decent armor and weapons goes, "Oh, 40, that's adorable. I'm at 120." So it's different ways of being good at martial, but there's no real point in a magician to try to be good at normal martial because you can just use magic for that. It's just a different way of doing it. And it's the same with faith. You could technically just wander into a fight and say, "Well, I wish to win this fight. I'm going to call upon my divine favor," which you can do once per adventure, and then what is essentially smite your opponent. But you can only do it once, so you have to make it count. Whereas the knight is still just going to wade in heavy armor, heavy weapons, and deal consistent amounts of damage all the time.
Oh,
So no, there's in the system there's no need for a Gish character. There's no need to double up on it because you are allowed to be good at stuff. And we're not going to try to penalize you for picking a playstyle that you feel is rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. I can certainly get that. And it also means that you don't deal with the problem of build traps, essentially. You know, of certain designers have put in like character traps or choices that you can pick that aren't going to, that for those who know how things work, aren't going to be as useful.
Yeah, there's no objectively best way to be a person. At least I don't. I mean, yes, probably being rich is objectively better than all of the other ones because then you can just hire whatever talent you need. But in a game like Lost Roads, you can't do everything with money. It's not a capitalistic society. And there is not. You can't do everything by faith. You can't do everything by magic. You can't do everything by alchemy. So you have to have good friends and a good crew around you. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems that you simply cannot solve on your own. But there is no one objectively best way to make a character. At least not one that we've found during the playtesting. And there is no objectively worse way of making a character that, man, I bet on the wrong horse, now I can't do anything. Like, of course, you can be unlucky and have a poor stat line, but you can still excel at something. We've had several examples of players who had shitty baseline stats for their character and then had one which redeemed them. So whenever it's like, "Oh man, we're in it now. Hey, could you step in and lend us your expertise? You're the one person who's actually good at this stuff." And it's like, "Yes, I can barely move. I can't speak coherently, and I frequently walk into door frames because I don't pay attention. But this is where I shine." And then they have this one breakout skill that they use. So yeah, it tends to work out quite well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, role playing is cooperative. You're supposed to find the thing that your group can help you with, and that you can help your group with, and then work within that constraint to make it a good experience for everyone.
Oh yeah, that's certainly a step above the bad habit of some of treating a party as a group of individuals.
Yeah, I mean, Lost Roads has very few stats. It doesn't have a lot of skills and attributes and all that kind of stuff. So characters tend to be generally competent enough because each of the traits are umbrella-like enough so that you could be on an even keel and not have someone be absolute dog shit at something. And that lends to the possibility of better cooperation within a group. So you don't have to, "Oh, well, you can't actually have this skill because you're a barbarian," or "No, you're worthless at this because you are a wizard, and we all know that wizards are this and this way." That's not a thing in this system. So you get to play with your friends and complement each other in your challenges.
Now, The other half of the campaign, of the current Kickstarter campaign you're doing for The World That Is, includes the adventure compilation. Now, I won't try and go into too much detail on the individual adventures because I don't want to spoil, obviously. But when it comes to this compilation of adventures, are each of them meant to be one-shots? Or are they meant to be multi-session adventures? What would you say is the average length for each of these?
The all of these have been released for the core book, so this is just me collecting them into one book. So one of the adventures is the introductory adventure to the rules set, and it's called Lights in Old Houses, and that is originally written as a convention adventure, so it's supposed to be run in a few hours. So that one is really quite quick. The others, I would say, if you manage to do it in one session, you're probably missing a lot of it. They're generally 2, 3, or 4 sessions long. And that's the same for the stuff that's coming out as stretch goals in the Kickstarter campaign, that there aren't any one shots. They're all 2 or 3 or 4 sessions long. You can tie them together to make a campaign if you want to, but you can also just dive in, play one of them, and then be done with it. And but I think I've settled on a length of adventure that's about between 2 and 4 sessions, apart from that one introductory adventure, which is in the compilation.
Yeah, I can get that. And because of that, with some of them being one shots and some of them not being one shots, are they built with a certain, I won't say level, but a certain character threshold in mind in some cases? Like some of them are a bit higher tier than others, or are they mostly built for relatively starting tier characters?
There is no such consideration at all. Lost Worlds doesn't have a level system, so there's no way to gauge and say that this adventure is for this sort of adventuring character that's level 9 to 15 or whatever. So that's not a thing. In the World That Is, there's a chapter on how to modify adventures for more challenging encounters. So I did some math on it to allow game masters to go, okay, clearly my players are breezing through this adventure. How do I ratchet up the challenge for them? But the adventures themselves don't have that, and since there are multiple ways of solving each problem, I didn't feel that there was a need. Like, of course, if you do the same old story, for instance, which is in the core compilation, there are bandits in there, and if you charge a bandit camp, it's not going to matter all that much if there's 6 players and they have 6 characters and they are fairly well armed. If they run up against 24 bandits, they're gonna get very whooped. It doesn't truly matter what kind of power base they have. They are just not gonna make that. You'd have to employ a different tactic. It's not, and we've had that during playtesting where people who play Dungeons and Dragons go, oh well, bandits are easy. We can just take them. And it's like, no, 6 people versus 24 is just not a good fight. You don't want to do that. You have to think of another way. So if you're blind to the ability of taking a different approach, you certainly are going to have to be very, very powerful to overcome some of these adventures, because not every nail is meant for hammering. Some you just have to do something else about.
Yeah. In that kind of situation, it comes down to the when in Rome philosophy. When you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to say that's limited to D&D thinking, but I've seen people try to adapt when jumping from like one war game to another. My favorite instance was a bunch of Warhammer 40k players decided to try out Infinity at my LGS. but they tried to use some of the same tactics that they could use in 40K and got tabled.
Yes, of course. It's not a good spot to be in. You might want to reconsider your life choices at that point.
And even in video games, I've seen this kind of thing. I've seen like Tekken players try out Virtua Fighter for the first time, and they learned very quickly that it's a different energy.
Yeah. Now one of the things in the Lost Roads, for instance, is the magic system doesn't have like mana points or spell slots or anything. That's not a thing. We don't do that here. So if you try for a spell and you succeed, you can just do it again. You can keep doing it as long as you have the prerequisite material and time, and no one spots you and hits you in the head with a rock while you're chanting away. You can just keep doing it, and that's a hurdle for some players who have played in systems where you are limited in your magic. You're constrained by the system in one way or another, and they go, well, what can I just go again? It's like, of course you can. Why wouldn't you? And it's like, oh, but I didn't know that was a thing. And it's like, yes, that's how this world is. Of course, there's going to be a slight piece of exhaustion setting in after a while once you've done the same spell over and over again. But you certainly can keep hammering away at the problem, and eventually you might be able to do it.
Oh yeah. Like even a brick can fly if you throw it hard enough.
Yes, for sure.
And with that kind of thing in mind, I do recall hinting at on the Kickstarter page of a further adventure that was going to have a bit more focus on death. That adventure being the Blackened Gate.
Yes, so the Blackened Gate will be part of the goal for the campaign, so it's not even a stretch goal. You just get it once the campaign gets funded. And the Blackened, each adventure for the world that is tailored towards one type of character, where they get to shine. So there are things for everything in the book to get the spotlight in at least one of the adventures. And the Blackened Gate is all about the Sphere of Undeath. So it actually has additional rules for the Sphere of Undeath that it just isn't in the world that is book, but is in that adventure instead. It's not essential stuff, it's just perks. But if you don't have someone who knows the Sphere of Undeath, who is a necromancer, and you play that adventure, you're going to have a very different time compared to if you have a practicing necromancer in your group. It's certainly not an impossible adventure, not at all. None of these require you to have a certain thing, but it will certainly be a good experience for the group's necromancer to play that adventure because they'll feel right at home. And it's the same for all of the adventures. Like, this adventure is all about archaeoengineering. This one is all about potions. This one is all about sphere of illusions and all this stuff. So it all gets to flourish and be cool for a bit.
Yeah. Plus,
everyone gets a spotlight.
Yeah. Plus, when it comes to necromancy, I've gotten in some arguments over the years about whether or not player characters who are supposed to be heroes should be able to access it. But I think a lot of people forget that originally necromancy was a form of divination tied to the dead. But I think years of having the necromancer as the villain have kind of had people forget that fact.
Yeah, the necromancy in the world that is quite unique compared to other types of magic in the Lost Roads. Mostly because any failure when trying to use the Sphere of Undeath will be penalized with something called a corpse price. No other sphere has that mechanic. It is completely unique to that sphere. And that's because you are inviting energies that are actively hostile to living things. And you, as a magician, is most likely alive. which means you are trying to bathe in acid whenever you're trying to do one of these spells. So if it misfires, you are going to have a negative reaction, let's say. And there's a big and nice table that lets you randomize what happens. And some of these are character altering, others are a minor inconvenience, and some are at least momentarily catastrophic. So as a necromancer, you have to be on your toes a bit. You can't just go around racing grandma everywhere. That's not going to pay off in the end. You have to have your wits about you just a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah.
But certainly everyone could learn it. It's not like it's only dark wizards do necromancy. No. Everyone who needs more hands can just raise old hands and just get back to work. Just because you're dead doesn't mean that you can get to stop working.
And with them now, I feel like that is reinforcing that whole motif of there's always some sort of catch when it comes to magic.
Yeah, the thing was that during playtesting, it became very, very obvious that the sphere of undeath was very unbalanced compared to the other spheres. It would probably have needed to be broken down into several spheres in order to balance it out. But since all of the undeath stuff is within one sphere, it becomes very, very powerful. So it got balanced out with corpse price and some other things, which meant that it now becomes fully playable and not just something that's relegated to this one scary necromancer NPC, but instead becomes a playable thing in the world that you can go ahead and use. And that's been a staple throughout all of the adventure design, that if it is possible to do for anyone, then it's possible for the players as well. It's not like, and this person has this specific spell that only he knows. No, that's not a thing. In this world, that's not a thing. If the spell exists, you are also able to learn it.
Yeah.
If this item exists, you can also wield it. I've gotten very, very tired of adventures that gatekeep things like that and keep it away from the players by saying only this NPC can use this one artifact. And I go, why? Why is that a thing, design-wise? So we just didn't do that. We made sure that if it's available, then it's available for everyone, and that includes magic. But that means that you have to balance it just a tad, so that no one has a bad time just because they picked the wrong kind of magic. That'd be sad to have an objectively best kind of magic. That would just be, yeah, we don't want that.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, what are you shooting for a page count for the world that is, as well as the adventure compilation?
So, the world that is just about, it's a bit smaller than the rulebook. It's 102 pages. The core rulebook that came out 2 years ago is 120, and the core adventure compilation is slightly bigger than the world that is. It's 114 pages. The Blackened Gate is 12, I think, the adventure. So that is more pocket-sized. These aren't very big books. I decided I wanted to break them apart rather than have big 500-page tomes for people to carry around, because you don't always need every book for every session. So I figured it'd be better to just leave them aside. Like the character creation rule set, the World to Be, that came up with the other Kickstarter. You don't need that stuff in the rulebook, because you don't need it for character advancement. You only need that book when you are making your character, and then you just set it aside. And it's the same with the core adventure compilation. Once you've played those adventures, it doesn't need to be part of like the big tome of role-playing game. It can just be set to the side because you're not using those adventures today. So it's split up and becomes a bit more manageable page count wise.
Oh yeah, and I do appreciate that you had that in the materials you had sent me, that there is a proper index and there is a proper set of bookmarks in the PDFs.
Yeah, the PDF comes with bookmarks, and it also comes in two variants, one with the parchment background that's in the printed version, but there's also a blank page background so that it's easier to read on a pad, or if you need to print a page or two for reference when you're playing. So the files come in two variants.
Yeah. Which is certainly vital since and we ended up talking about this beforehand when it comes to the issue of light levels with reading PDFs on a screen versus reading it physically. It's a different setup, and the last thing you'd want is to have people wear out their eyes.
Yeah, they shouldn't be, squinting hard just to work out what this table says. Then it's better to just have a white background so that it becomes legible for everyone. Yeah. Not quite as pretty, but it's all about the quality of life for the players and the game master too, of course.
Oh yeah. But with that said, what would you be shooting for as far as a release window? Not a hard date, mind you, but a ballpark.
The last Kickstarter campaign I did, the book was done, but the print proofs were not. And they came back just garbage, just garbled, because I didn't quite know how to do the formatting for the printer, the printer side of things. So that delayed the release a lot. That's not the case anymore. The book is done, the proof is done. So the moment that the Kickstarter campaign concludes and the funds are released, I could potentially release it that day. So I've given myself a very, very wide margin, and I think the Kickstarter itself says October of this year. But if it's not out by September, I'd be very surprised. Like, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be out late August, early September. It would take some sort of minor accidental catastrophe in order to delay it that much. It should just be a matter of getting the campaign concluded and then just releasing the book.
Oh yeah, and I'll certainly look forward to seeing that. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens here. And
I'm honored to be part of the temple.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
もついを持つ